Welcome. This is the Cisco CCNA ENSA, also known as the Enterprise Networking Security and Automation course. This course focuses on the CCNA version 7 curriculum. This is course 3 of 3. Module 3, Network Security Concepts. This is actually one of the thicker PowerPoints. We have current states of cybersecurity, threat actors, malware, common network attacks, IP vulnerabilities, threats, vulnerabilities for TCP, and UDP, IP services, best practices, and some light cryptography. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 main sections. So let's jump on in. Let's get what we can do it. Again, important part is, as we are learning, the core thing here is we're expecting a sandbox environment, the ethical component, we're not doing this illegally, and so forth. So, current state of cybersecurity. It is a mess. But there are certain terms we need to understand. Assets, vulnerabilities, threats, exposures, mitigation, and risk. These are key terms. You cannot get very far without a good understanding of them. Assets are assets. They are things that are of value on your network. Vulnerability is a weakness in a system or its design that can be exploited by a threat. Threats are a potential danger to a company's asset, data, or network. Exploit is a mechanism that takes advantage of a vulnerability. Mitigation is a countermeasure. And risk is the likelihood of a threat to be realized or exploited. One thing that we don't really talk about is there's normally a person or an attacker that is trying to do this against a victim. So an attacker is going to try to find an exploit in a vulnerability on the victim's resource or the victim's machine, for example. When we look at the ability or the vector of an attack, that is basically how are we getting to our victim? That's the vector or the path of an attack. Sometimes the attackers are called threat actors, sometimes they're called hackers, sometimes they're called threat, varying terms depending on the books and the reading material. There are two main attack vectors of a victim: internal threat or external threat. Internal threats are going to be something inside the network that is targeting the compromised host or the victim inside the network. An outside the network attack, an external attack, is going to be coming from the outside portion of the network, like the internet, for example. The key thing here is data loss or data exfiltration. This is whether it's on purpose or by accident, or it's stolen, or just a bad person did it. Data loss can be a huge blow. Companies that typically have data loss don't recover. It's a loss of reputation, loss of revenue or money or customers. It could be a loss of business or competitive advantage. The fun part with all of that is because there are very strict guidelines about personable data or personal identifiable data, there could be legal action. There could be fines of the organization because there was a loss. Significant cost and effort normally is put in to prevent the loss. But there's also significant cost and effort to notify the individuals if there's a data breach. Many states have a data breach clause in their laws saying if a organization houses someone's data and that organization has a data breach, they have to identify who data was compromised and notify them in a timely manner. Some of this is also called the data loss prevention controls to prevent data from being lost. And this is going to be a combination of strategic, operational, and tactical measures to prevent possible data breaches when possible. So what are these data loss controls? What are these data loss vectors? What are these things that prevent data loss? So main vectors for data loss are email and social networks or social media. They can intercept emails or messages to capture important information. Unencrypted devices, that's going to be USB flash drives, USB hard drives that are lost. Cloud storage when it's compromised or has a weak password. Removable media, again, flash drives, hard copies, that's paper, physical copies, and most importantly, improper access controls. I dealt with many organizations that improperly set up their controls so that while they were trying to secure something, they didn't have the proper controls in place, and so things kept getting out. More specifically, they would have administrators put sensitive data on flash drives that were not encrypted, and the administrators would lose the flash drive, and the exposure of that lost data, or that data in general, was out there. And many times this had occurred, and they had lost private information, they had lost PII on kids, they've lost accounting records, just because there wasn't a proper access control or just proper procedure, such as making sure any sensitive data leaving on removable media is encrypted. Alright, so now let's talk about who's actually doing the attacking. Who are the threat actors? And a threat actor is the next main section. Threat actors are typically those that are doing the negative, but they're not always the negative. We have a umbrella term, hacker, and normally hackers are broken into three main categories: white, black, and gray. White are the ethical individuals, black are the unethical or more criminal, gray hat is a combination in between. Why they do what they do is also equally important, but the process of how they do it is what identifies them as black hat, gray hat, or white hat. If you are doing it with permission, legally, you're typically a white hat. If you're kind of skating the line of legality, probably a gray hat. If you are definitely crossing that line, then black hat. Other hacking subgroups might be a script kiddie or a hacktivist, a vulnerability broker. You could be a cyber criminal, a state-sponsored individual as well. The big ones are hacktivists, and that's typically gray hats that are activists that they use their hacking skills, normally for a reason they believe is important, like public protesting. Script kiddies are those that are inexperienced, but they understand how to run the tools. They may not understand how it all works, but they know in order to achieve this task, use this tool, and they have a very limited understanding of how the tools actually function. The big thing is, when we're talking illegal activities, when we're talking the black hat side, cyber criminals are there. And it is estimated that realistically cyber criminals are stealing billions, if not trillions of dollars around the world. They are stealing billions from consumers and from businesses, again, all over the place. And that could be ransomware, zero-day exploits, botnets, banking issues, phone scams, and more. This is just a sad fact of life. Ransomware is growing quick, and businesses pay. They know that This is now just an operational cost. Hacktivists are another one, and again, these are groups like Anonymous and other groups that target typically for a government reason or to protest a government reason. So some of the content on the slides you have to take with a grain of salt. Hacktivists tend to rely on fairly basic free available tools. That's kind of garbage. It all depends on the individual, and again, this is more based off of their intent. Why are they doing this? If they're doing it in form of a protest, then they're a hacktivist. Could a black hat be a cyber criminal and a hacktivist? Sure. What are they doing and what is their intent? That dictates the type of threat actor they are. Next is state-sponsored hackers. These are funded by government and they are very typically advanced. They have custom tools, they have sophisticated tools, and they are pretty involved. Stuxnet malware was created by a hacktivist or a state-sponsored group to target another country. That's not a hacktivist because that's not a protest. That is sabotage or espionage. So again, the reasoning or the intent behind why they're doing it is important. And that is it for this module. If you got any questions or concerns, please reach out. Thank you.